Now, I am not a racist. However, CAS, or close air support, has been one of, if not the biggest thing taking away my fun and enjoyment from this game for a long time now. And I'm usually not having a ton of fun to begin with. It's a serious problem, and there are already plenty of people talking about it, and rightfully so, but not many people actively focus on solutions. So that's what I'm here to do. To look at some options that would help fix this problem, and go a bit deeper into solutions than just increase spawn points. Actually, when I spawn in a PE8 and drop a 5,000 kilogram bomb from high altitude, instantly vaporizing half my team, that's actually called strategic bombing, not close air support. Have you considered taking that 5,000 kilogram bomb and fucking yourself with it? Whenever I mention CAS, I mean any way a player from the air attacks or is in some other way a nuisance to ground units. Okay? Okay. Now there are actually people who genuinely believe that, well, CAS is not a problem at all and it's actually perfectly balanced. People need to stop complaining and just play better. These people then come with such astonishingly thought-provoking arguments such as, just use smoke. Just use cover, it's not that hard. Well, you have a roof MG, right? Just use that to defend yourself. If you don't like CAS, just play World of Tanks. Well, there is a single SPAA that's actually really strong against aircraft. Or my favorite. Well, CAS is really strong in real life. So aircraft should have every right to absolutely clobber fuck ground units in their own game mode. Now, as a faithful Christian, I don't want to judge people. And of course, everyone perceives the world around them in a different way. And some people simply do so incorrectly. If you hadn't noticed yet, this video might be a bit more aggressive than usual. This will be primarily because of my barely contained rage and unadulterated hatred towards CAS players. So also forgive me if my responses in the comments will follow this trend. Firstly, I do want to more properly explain why CAS is such a big problem. To maybe convince some of the delusional psychopaths that still think CAS is fair and balanced, and to point out some things that I haven't really seen people talk about before. The short answer to why CAS is a problem: it's just unfair. Okay, for the longer answer. Usually when CAS is discussed, it's discussed in a way of aircraft versus SPAA. So okay, let's first go over that argument then. I don't believe anti-air is a fair counter to aircraft. Let's first talk about lower tiers, where there is just no reliable way of taking out an aircraft with SPAA unless they're flying straight towards you. Another YouTuber, Timtra, explained this very well. Performing an airstrike on a player on the ground, a slow-moving target on a 2D plane, especially with AoE attacks, i.e. bombs and rockets, is much easier than shooting down an aircraft in the sky, a fast-moving target in a 3D plane. Even if an aircraft does fly in a straight line towards you, often one of three things will happen. About 10% of the time, the air player just kills you. Another 10% of the time, you engage early and you shoot down the aircraft, after which they just crash in a ditch somewhere. But about 80% of the time, you shoot and kill the aircraft, absolutely eviscerate them, but they somehow still have enough structural integrity to keep flying straight towards you and kill you anyway. Not to mention how easy it is for the CAS player to just not fly towards SPAA and still perform airstrikes on other players. The player in the air is always in full control of the fight. If the CAS player ever feels they're at a disadvantage, they could just ignore the SPAA or just fly away. And there's absolutely nothing the player on the ground can do about it. In contrast, the ground player, whether he's in an AA or not, is forced to engage in the fight, if the CAS player so chooses. At higher tiers this is less of a problem, but now you face new problems, like CAS just straight up being able to outrange any SPAA in the game. Another problem with top tier in general is that about 70 to 80% of the players are premium players, and you can't buy high tier SPAAs. What you can buy is high tier CAS. I do have to take a moment to talk about the last update though, and the new stuff it brought for SPAA. When I first learned about them, I was excited, but also very skeptical. I honestly kinda expected it all to be a band-aid fix on an active epileptic seizure, but thankfully this is not the case. The new vehicles themselves seem neat, but the new radar system is kind of a godsend. It is so much easier to engage aircraft now, and it finally gives especially jets a run for their money, which I'm very happy about. Long term, I'm not sure how much this will really change anything though, especially assuming it doesn't get nerfed. I haven't been able to play the new SAMs yet, but I have tested the new radar system on older vehicles with some friends, and it's pretty easily beaten by either flying a little bit lower or a little bit higher. And the system itself seems very good, but not all that fun to use for a long time. This is my perspective the evening the update came out, as I'm writing this. If I change my mind on anything, I'll add a bit. It is a leap in the right direction though, but more has to be done, especially considering for lower tiers, nothing changes. And as a regular ground unit, there is still no way to defend yourself. And there are way more disadvantages for SPAA, like CAS always knowing where you are, because leaving spawn is not always a safe option, and shooting gives away your position anyway. Not to mention how fucked up sounds are, often making it extremely hard for the player on the ground to locate the player in the air. Or when there's two aircraft, there's literally no possible way you can win. Or just how fucking boring and unrewarding SPAA is to play. And then there are of course specific aircraft that are even more overpowered and just get spammed at this point, like the Yak 9K, which, in my opinion, should be taken behind a metaphorical shed and shot in the back of the skull. Metaphorically. In general, CAS is just not hard to use, but of course I had to try this out for myself. In my well over 4,000 hours of playing this pathetic excuse of a game, I have spent very little time playing with aircraft. A couple of low-tier CAS aircraft is all I have. I've been using them a little bit now, but overall I am very unexperienced with aircraft. My first try using CAS took some getting used to. My second try, I could consistently bomb other players without dying myself. It is not hard. I haven't played any CAS at top tier, but from the looks of it, by far the most difficult thing there is knowing the keybinds, and now dodging more missiles, I guess. Having said this, I understand why people play CAS, because it is really cool and definitely fun. Apart from of course the dopamine hit from seeing funny orange text on screen, performing CAS can just be quite fun. It's also leagues better than CAS in air game modes. Hell, even the air-to-air combat can often be more fun in mixed battles. There are also definitely some cool skills you can learn, and certain weapons do take more skill to use. But there's one thing that I often see being completely ignored. No matter how difficult certain weapons are to use, no matter how much smoke you deploy or cover you have, no matter how strong SPAA is, the player on the ground, unless in a dedicated anti-air, cannot fight back against the player in the sky. There is no risk involved for the CAS player, and the player on the ground is fully at the mercy of the CAS player. The battle is almost never aircraft versus SPAA, it's almost always aircraft versus regular ground player, in which case the battle is fully decided by how competent the CAS player is, so it will never be fair. It's so fucking stupid that the only game mode where you can play with tanks is still dominated by aircraft. And most players do not want to waste time by grinding the entire AA line, or even an entire air tree, when the grind is already as painfully slow as it is. And a lot of people aren't even interested in these vehicles, especially not for the sole purpose of just having a competitive edge. CAS completely ruins the flow of ground vehicles, which is what the game mode should be for. As a ground player, when an aircraft is up, the only thing you can do is pray they don't go for you and hide. Effectively meaning you just have to stop playing. And very often your entire match can be ruined by a single player in the sky, all the while fully knowing the other player is using absolutely no skill whatsoever, and that the only thing you can do about it is spend even more hundreds of hours researching vehicles you don't even really want. I for one like to play tanks in my tank game, actively having to stop playing tanks and instead having to use vehicles that are unbearably boring to play, just for the off chance of maybe being able to have a proper ground fight afterwards, is just poor game design. The battle is always overwhelmingly in favor of CAS, and against regular ground units, it's not a fight at all. Even when CAS is on your own team, they're annoying. CAS players never go for the targets they're supposed to, or suicide bomb, or just crash into the ground, being completely useless and wasting your tickets. When they do a proper job providing CAS, they often just steal kills or potential fights, and they effectively just force you to play the game less. I'm not even going to get into helicopters and strike drones. If you genuinely believe there's even a single scenario with these vehicles where either player has fun, convince me. The only half-reasonable argument I've heard in favor of CAS is to prevent camping. First of all, camping is not always bad, tanks were often literally made for it. The kill cam you get after getting killed also always shows the exact location of the enemy camper, so they're often forced to relocate anyways. And if there is ever a position where you can't outmaneuver or flank the player or anything, that should just be fixed with proper map design, which I am fully aware is a completely foreign concept to Gaijin, but I know it can be done. Now there are more smaller things, some of which I'll mention later as well, but for now, I'll leave it at this. Alright, let's now look at some fixes. Now easily the simplest, most effective, easiest to implement, and overall best solution would be to add an additional game mode without CAS and SPAA. But I don't believe this will ever happen. Even more frustratingly, Gaijin utterly refuses to even give a reason as to why they won't do it. For the longest time, their reasoning was that there weren't enough players for it to split between 2 game modes, which wasn't really the case back then, and it definitely isn't now. I remember later seeing a new argument from the devs that said something along the lines of, we want to give players the option of experiencing combined arms battles. Except it's not an option, it's only an option if you play aircraft. If you want to play tanks, you're forced to play with CAS. Never mind that, adding an additional game mode wouldn't change this. I actually couldn't find this response back anymore, and in general couldn't really find any official responses from the devs, so I asked on the forums if there were any, shortly after which my post got deleted for spam. Make of that what you will. So yeah, in reality it might have something to do with people having an easier time spending money when they're frustrated, but that's just a game theory. Let's move on to other solutions, as even if by some miracle Gaijin gains consciousness and does add a ground forces only mode, CAS in mixed battles would still need to be balanced. My goal with the following changes is to make it so ground players have a larger say into how the battle is going to go, instead of having to constantly yield to CAS in their own game mode. Let's start with the obvious, reworking spawn points. I actually think spawn points for planes shouldn't be increased. Taking out an aircraft to counter other aircraft should be very easy if possible. On the other hand, point costs for any kind of ground ordnance, whether that's bombs, rockets, missiles, any gun ammunition with more than 20mm of pen, or anything else aircraft sodomize ground units with, should be increased dramatically. CAS should cost at least 3 times the points it does now, so you actually have to kinda sorta work for it. Another obvious one, but aircraft should have to take off from the runway, with heavy bombers maybe being the exception. Airfields should also be placed further away depending on the BR of the match, as it should always take a good couple of minutes for aircraft to reach the battlefield. Sometimes being out of the fight for that long could be very detrimental, so players would have to tactically decide when is the right time to take out their aircraft, instead of just always taking it out as soon as possible because it's always the best option. Additionally, or alternatively, you could limit the amount of aircraft that can be in the sky at once. I would change this to 2 or 3 per team, just so CAS wouldn't be nearly as overwhelming as it is now. Other people have also suggested giving every player a base fighter plane that they can spawn, similarly to how strike drones work at top tier, but these planes would change depending on BR. This could be nice, but I honestly personally don't need this. Aircraft also shouldn't get any markers of enemy tanks. All those arrows pointing out the exact locations of ground units, just because they had the audacity to play the game, gone. Spotting targets is quite possibly the hardest thing about CAS, and even that is very easy, especially at top tier with thermals and such. So having this be more challenging for CAS players could encourage ground players to do more when aircraft are up. And of course it would also make it more difficult for CAS. Any kind of aircraft should also not be able to use their ordnance after they have been killed already. Again, with heavy bombers maybe being the exception. They're already suffering enough, to be honest. This is a problem especially prevalent with helicopters. All my homies hate helicopters. As well as the situation I explained earlier, where often if an aircraft is coming straight towards you and you kill them, they can still kill you back with bombs or whatever. I also think a more detailed damage system is needed for aircraft. You see, currently on aircraft the entire fuselage cannot be destroyed apart from the tail section, which is mostly fine for air-to-air combat, where once you kill someone you can move out of the way anyway, but for ground units this is not the case. Often again, leading to aircraft still being able to kill you way after you have already killed them. Being able to actually destroy the fuselage would help this, and of course also be more realistic overall. Next up I want to quickly touch on a particularly upsetting trend amongst CAS players, especially the newer ones: suicide bombing. As if CAS wasn't easy enough to use already, you can also just fly straight into the guy with no regard for self-preservation. My fix for this is quite simple. Just make it so the CAS player doesn't get any rewards for kills they get shortly before or after they die, given they die by themselves. if one of your wings gets shot off and you're on fire, but you still manage to line up a bombing run, that's fair game. That's honestly all that needs to be changed about the aircraft directly, I think. But there are some more fun things that we can add that are more external. Another obvious one is of course adding better SPAA, and multiple vehicle SPAs being added opened up a huge box of new vehicles that can be added. This would for sure be super nice to see, seeing as how we're repeatedly getting newer and newer jets with more advanced weapon systems and with absolutely no way of countering them apart from other aircraft. On a side note, I found it very funny when all the cast mates complained about the Estrella because it could, quote, kill me when I am still in my spawn. Fully pretending as if they're not doing the exact same thing to players on the ground. Anyway, new and better SPA will be far from a great fix though, because again, they're super fucking boring and unrewarding. Increasing the points you get for downing an aircraft would definitely help and make a lot of sense as well. I mean, aircraft cost more points to spawn and they're significantly stronger, so it would only make sense if they're worth more also. This doesn't fix the boring part though. Here's the big problem. Say you're in an actual tank and you notice several enemy aircraft are in the sky. You in your tank can't do much of anything against them, but your SPAA can. But you don't want to J out and destroy your perfectly fine tank just to spawn in an AA and take out like 2 aircraft, only to then J out again just to play with your tank again. Just sitting in SPAA the entire match is also not the solution, as again it's just super boring and unrewarding when you only face 2 aircraft in a 15-minute match. What I would do to fix this is the following. Whenever you're in a proper tank and decide, hey, I'd like to use my SPAA now, you can just press M to open a menu and immediately spawn in your SPAA, but your normal tank will still exist. Then you can switch between your tank and SPAA at will. Similarly to how you can switch between a drone and light tank or between different vehicles in multi-vehicle SAMs. I can see how this could potentially cause some issues, with you being able to bait a shot with your AA and then driving out with your tank, for instance. I don't see this becoming a major issue though, and if it does, there are ways to fix it by making it so switching between vehicles takes longer, like 3 to 5 seconds or so. In addition to this, I'd like to propose a new type of weapon system, V-SHORADs. Or Very Short Range Air Defense Systems. This concept I was especially inspired by because of the American Centurion Ram, a system in and of itself inspired directly from the military documentary Battleship, starring Liam Neeson. This vehicle isn't actually designed to take down aircraft, but rather to intercept any incoming ammunitions, whether that's missiles, rockets, alien things, or incoming fucking artillery shells. You'd basically be a hard kill active protection system for your entire team. I don't think vehicles like these are entirely out of the question either, as Gaijin did just add awards for taking down enemy ammunitions. There are a couple of problems with this though. Firstly, I'm not sure every country has a vehicle like this. America has the CRAM of course, Germany has the Skyranger system on several chassis. Russia, however, doesn't really have anything. They have some really fucking cool CWIS systems for ships, but nothing for land, I don't think. Poland has their own V-SHORAD though, but I don't think that would make Polish people very happy. The Czechs are also working on their own V-SHORAD, but that's already making Czech people not very happy. Though I believe that at least a newer version of the Panzer might be able to lock on and shoot down missiles as well, if you can't already do that in-game with the new radar system. Both Britain and Canada use the CRAM as well, but on a trailer, so I'm not sure how well that would work. I would just give them the Centurion, or alternatively this dingus from India. Both Japan and Thailand don't have anything either. China has many options though, one of which we're actually already getting in-game. They could also still add the Type 625E, the LD-2000, the LD-2000 with missiles, or even the LD-3000, and more. Both Italy and Hungary are interested in the Skyranger system, the Netherlands as well, for France. None of the Nordic countries really have a V-SHORAD system as far as I could find, but Israel does have their own version of the CRAM. Alright, that probably wasn't very convincing. In addition to this, I'm not sure how fun these would be to play. Systems like the CRAM only have a range of about 2 kilometers. So you'd have to react super quickly to intercept incoming missiles, at which point it's just easier to have it done automatically. This is actually a problem that's already in the game. Vehicles like the Tor M1 can, in real life, automatically detect and target incoming ammunitions. But you can't in-game, because human reactions just aren't fast enough. I think a better way to do it is to add systems like the CRAM as capturable objectives, a couple of which can be placed on the map. These then would have to be under one team's controlled function and would defend a decent area from incoming threats. This you can counter by either capturing or destroying it from the ground. This ties back to what I wanted earlier with ground units having more say on how the battle develops, and might also just make ground battles more interesting. If one of these systems is destroyed, it will automatically start repairing, which will take like 2 to 3 minutes, after which it will be fully functional again. This repair process can be significantly shortened with the help of a player. You can go even further with this, like add AAA batteries for lower tiers, or maybe add those Patriots they so proudly showed off that one time and then never added. Maybe you could also capture radar systems, which would significantly increase the range these systems can function from, but might take longer to repair. There's quite a bit you can do with this, and even just capturable AAA would be an astronomical help with balancing things out, as again it gives more power to the regular players on the ground again, apart from also just being really fucking cool. I sincerely hope you enjoyed these suggestions, but I hope even more sincerely that Gaijin will actually do something with player feedback for once. CAS is still, at least for me personally, one of the biggest problems I have with this game, and I cannot express how badly I want Gaijin to do something about it. More than just add more SPAA, but they won't, because this makes them way more money, and I'm curious to see how much longer they'll be able to keep getting away with stuff like this. Anyway, if you have any suggestions yourself, or have feedback on my suggestions, please do let me know. If you still think CAS is fine, also please let me know so I can laugh at you. Subscribe.